In this lesson, we'll learn about Maya's nonlinear squash deformer. The squash deformer can be used for squash and stretch deformations. Let's go ahead and experiment with it on our football. So with that selected, we'll head over to Create Deformers, Nonlinear, and choose Squash. We'll go ahead and take a look at the options. So we have our low and high bound parameters to control the upper and lower extent of the squash deformer. Next we have our start and end smoothness parameters, and these are essentially going to do exactly what they say. They're going to smooth out the result of our squash and stretch based off of how we adjust our low and high bound values. For instance, as we adjust our low bound position, we would use our start smoothness to smooth out that result. And of course, then the end smoothness would be for the high bound. We could also adjust our max expand position, basically the center between the low and high bound can be regulated by this parameter. And then the expand controls how much our object will squash and stretch. And then the factor is what we would use to actually create the squash and stretch. But let's go ahead and see these in use. We'll go ahead and choose Create and head over to our channel box. Under Inputs, we'll find our squash node. Alright, so taking a look at the factor, again, this is what we'd use to create the squash and stretch deformation. Now let's say if we wanted to decrease the amount of squash and stretch, well, we can head over to Expand and start to drop that value. Now we don't have as much. And then we can adjust the max expand position, again, to control where the squash and stretch will occur. And again, we have the start and end smoothness. So for instance, if we were to take our low bound and start to, let's say, bring that up, we can now go to our start smoothness to kind of smooth out that section on our mesh. If we were to, let's say, bring this back to -1 and start to adjust our high bound, so we bring this down, maybe creating more volume underneath, we can then use the end smoothness to kind of control how much volume we'll add. So that's basically a look at the squash deformer. What's really neat about this is we can use this for, let's say, a tire animation to add pressure to the tire as it drives, which we do use in our cartoon vehicle rigging course. But taking a look at this, if we were to, let's say, take our move tool and start to kind of move our football up and down, you get an idea of how useful this deformer truly is. So for a tire, for instance, this would be great to make sure that the edges of the tire kind of protrude out for volume. So in this lesson, we learned how to work with the squash deformer in Maya.